hey, everybody, Shane's fucking gay. And the whole locker room of 125 guys would yell
Shane's
back,
gay.
Gay.
Yeah.
And then he'd yell, so fucking gay. And the whole locker room would respond, gay. So fucking gay. Gay. Let's go balls out. On today's show, Desolation Wilderness in Lake Tahoe. You may have heard of it. It's the best place for a cold plunge. MLB says goodbye to its most hated umpire since Joe West. But was he really the worst?
Yes.
And finally, fucking locker room talk.
Locker room talk.
Let's talk about it.
Tired of the sensationalized sports takes? Fed up with the same old rundown? Forget that. Welcome to Balls Out with Shane Wickes and Ophny Escalante. We're peeling back the layers of the game to explore the untold stories, emerging trends, and influential personalities that are reshaping sports, bringing you bold, in-depth analysis with a splash of West Coast flair. It's time to shake things up. Let's go balls out.
And it's time to go.
Balls out. My name is Ophny Escalante.
Yes,
how are you? Shane Wickes, the co-host and host of the Balls Out podcast. How are you doing?
I'm well.
We are
All
back.
things considered.
We are back from a short hiatus.
Yes, apologies.
But we're back and we're ready to go balls out. The quote for today is, the quote of the day is, today is the greatest day I've ever known. Can't live for tomorrow. Tomorrow is much too long, from the great Billy Corrigan and the band Smashing Pumpkins. And I thought that was a really good message for today, because today is all we're promised. And I know you're going through some things at home, Shane, with some things that happen to homeowners. No pun intended.
Mold.
Tell me.
Yeah, a clogged pipe, ironically, led to a leak that led to the discovery of a lot of mold.
A lot of mold.
And the demolition of our entire kitchen. We've been in this house for less than a year, mind you. And
talk about peeling back the layers.
Well, ironically, they ripped off this big cabinet that had taken up most of the wall finally yesterday, and they found not one but two separate layers of wallpapering with floral designs.
Well, that's what we do on this show. We peel back the layers. So,
oh my God. This is one thing. Now, right? Fortunately, they also found mold on that wall, so they have to rip it out, for which I am grateful. They're going to be getting rid of the wallpaper for us. You
know, I don't mean to make blanket statements here, but you are dealing with contract workers who typically have lots of jobs. How's that relationship with the people who are doing your work right now going? Is that going, well, if I say as expected, I know the horror stories. I've had them myself. You know, these guys do what they do, and they say it's going to take.
I'll say this.
Walk me through it.
I'll say this for my guys, Sergio and Joshua.
Shout out Sergio
and Joshua from the Palo Alto Roto-Rooter. They're not sponsoring the show. In fact, I'm paying them. I don't even know. I don't want to admit to how much money, but no, those guys have been, honestly, they've been great. They're swamped. They're not too many, licensed plumbers in the greater peninsula area. And in all honesty, all of those working class trades have really, they've been priced out of this area for such a long time. So
plumbers make.
Oh, they do make good money now, right?
Very good money,
right? But they're on. It's starting to catch up.
But it's a shitty job.
There you have it. This was actually a gray water line that backed up. It wasn't sewage line, thankfully. But regardless, like I said, we've demolished our entire kitchen, half of a bedroom underneath that.
So have a Memorial Day weekend, I guess, right? But you did get away, and you were able to get out to Lake Tahoe, and you talked about desolation and wilderness and cold plunges right from the get. So please tell me more.
I will say of names for areas of forests or national forests or however you want to term this, Desolation Wilderness is
That's like a band name from the 90s.
Oh man, it's fabulous. So yes, we were staying in the North Lake, but we drove over for part of the day to South Lake. Actually, we had a jam-packed, like, we were only there for maybe 36 hours.
Jamming.
We went kayaking, we went hiking, we went to the beach.
I want to know about kayaking, but let's come back to that.
Okay.
Continue. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we drove out towards, Bliss State Park is out there too.
Bliss.
Then,
that word to me, I love that word.
it's actually DL Bliss. I don't know what the DL stands for.
Maybe it's DL Hughley
on
on the DL. But the word bliss, I love it. And I remember one time I wanted to name a band Bliss, and the bass player looked at me and right, that's cool, Bliss, right?
Yeah.
The bass player looked at me and said, "What are we running through daisies holding hands?" He said,
Fucking
"No." Boom. I didn't want to say it. You can. But Bliss, come on, man. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
DL Bliss, you were up there in Tahoe.
We parked. It wasn't too. We were able to find parking relatively close to Emerald Bay. It's jamming, man. I mean, the amount of snow that they got this year, the waterfalls out there are just really. They're gorgeous. I mean, we got some really cool pictures. And we decided to do the hike up to Eagle Lake, which is only a couple miles. And I was used to it because I grew up at that elevation. But I think for, people who aren't used to elevation, that can definitely play a factor, because most of the people we traveled with up there, are Bay Area natives or have lived here for a significant amount of time. I made it up to Eagle Lake.
And I've heard that about elevation. I mean, I've been to Colorado, and especially with athletes, they talk about it a lot with sports, with athletes, right? When you're playing in an elevation where the air is thinner, correct? The higher you go, the air is thinner.
Yes.
It's harder to take in.
There's less oxygen.
Less oxygen, right? So did you ever play? I mean, I went to Colorado. I wasn't playing, but I never experienced that. That's a real thing,
ironically,
right?
The high school that I went to, McQueen High, go Lancers, is built on a hill, significant hill. I mean, it's a peak, it's a mountain, Peavine in Reno, and it's pretty significantly up, in the foothills of Peavine, and it is just a few hundred feet below Mile High in Denver. Up there. High.
No.
Mile
high.
Yeah. And I didn't notice it until my junior year of football. We traveled to Nevada Union and Grass Valley, which is in the Sacramento foothills area. And it wasn't until midway through that game that I thought, holy shit, I felt great. I could play another football game after this, I feel like. And, all the offensive linemen were looking around at each other.
What's happening? But like you lightheaded, or you just
No. You feel great, right?
Wow.
Because
after the
you're
first
coming
quarter
from elevation where you've been accustomed to just a lower.
So I'm sorry, I missed that. You grew up playing in elevate. Gotcha.
Yes,
okay. Gotcha.
Exactly. So,
but then what? It continues. You wear yourself out, or you just feel great the whole time you're playing?
No, when you train at elevation, anytime you come towards sea level, you're just going to notice that you have greater endurance purely because you're getting more oxygen per breath.
So, I mean, inside of that framework, I guess, if you will, the teams that play and elevate, the teams that are colleges that are located in higher elevations should do better, right? I mean, according to that logic, they should be more competitive, more athletic, more prepared, more. Yes, I mean,
arguments could be made. That used to be. Yeah. I can tell you, as somebody who grew up in the Mountain West Conference, that particularly when the 2010 Nevada team beat the 2010 then number 3 ranked Boise State team.
Boise.
There was talk for years after that, because I remember, I went on to play at Boise State, and my freshman year, we were going back to Nevada again to play, and it was all in the papers about how the Giants of Boise State are going to go up there in elevation and get tired, right? And Pete brought in the newspaper from the Gazette and was like, see what they're saying about you. I mean, he was a good motivationist.
Pete.
But that was a thought. I would have to tell you that as an athlete, as somebody who's competed in the different environments, that it does make a difference.
Yeah, does it? Good to know for gambling degenerates like myself too. Well,
yeah. Well, Broncos at home, although they haven't exactly.
Any information helps, brother. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Yeah.
So now you're in Tahoe and you came home and you're back to your house.
Feeling great after the cold plunge.
The cold plunge. Yeah. And you have a cold plunge on your patio as well, but the difference is that one's in Tahoe and one's on your patio, I guess, is the biggest difference, right?
They're about the same temperature though, I'll tell you.
What's speaking of temperature, nobody made me hotter than Angel Hernandez, bro. Like, are you serious?
It's hilarious because like, there was a part of me that, really would have initially agreed with you. And perhaps it is the perceived smugness or arrogance, that he doesn't seem to understand when he makes a mistake, right? And we don't tend to recognize that humility, at least as far as he's concerned. I saw an article and it got me thinking, is he really the worst in Major League Baseball?
I mean, the worst anything is subjective, right? I mean,
well, actually, in this instance, not so much, right? Because
to quote my godmother, not everything is all ever. Doesn't make any sense to anybody. But at
this point, we have a large number of very subjective, empirical data and numerical evidence, right, through advent of technology to
analytics
tell us,
or analytics.
Yes, how accurate.
And really, umping, as you know, that's all numbers, right? There's no analytics there. I mean, I guess maybe when you're eyeballing the strike zone, right?
What do you mean? I mean, as an umpire, there are no numbers.
Right?
You are watching and you are listening, and that is what's going on, right? Like,
I guess I'm thinking just in terms of wins and losses, and I mean, how are you rated as an umpire? Like, what?
Well, so let me explain it to you a little bit, because there's, for a while now, you can, and they have it broken down on Twitter in like kind of more fast facts forms, and that's, I think, what we'll look at a little bit more today. But so on Twitter at umpire
#X
or fucking whatever.
What is
Elon
X?
can keep trying, but it's not working that well. So at scorecards, and they just post the numbers that the MLB makes available.
Umpire scorecards.
Yes.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so MLB for a long
I've heard
time,
of that. I know about that.
Has had the ability to review the film. And the real-time strike zones that you see, projected on TV, they don't have the best accuracy, right? And that's not what the MLB is using when they go into review films, right? There's
you mean the on TV
right.
computer graphic
Correct.
of the zone? Gotcha.
Yes. It is really good at width. It's not very good at height in real time.
It's better if it's fatter than if it's longer.
It's getting better and better and better, obviously. But they have a way to go back and, there's like an X and a Y axis, and they can tell you within how many, like,
okay,
I don't quite understand. Yeah, I know. It's that detailed.
Farton.
Okay, it's that detailed. So I went back and I looked at the numbers, right? And I was like, even just for this year, where does Angel Hernandez rank amongst Major League Baseball umpires? And answer is middle of the pack.
Okay, well,
in terms of his accuracy behind the plate.
Be better.
Accuracy behind the plate.
50%, that's failing in an English class.
Then I have a larger question for you. Is it time to really overhaul the system then? Because if Hernandez is not the worst, and it's not even that close, are we at a point where, and I don't know the answer to this question, right? Because I look at baseball games today, although again, just last week I went on my tirade about the NLCS check swing fiasco that ended the Giants-Dodgers series, right? I don't think it's part of the charm anymore. And I don't know if that is part of there are cameras everywhere in such high definition that it makes so clear when a glaringly obvious mistake was made that I don't know where, who benefits by that, by the objectively wrong call standing.
Wait, objectively wrong call? What do you mean by that?
Meaning, so actually, ironically, Angel Hernandez just had one with Bryce Harper the other day. Reminded me very, very similar to the Flores check swing, where legitimately you're talking about a motion that a batter, any batter would take any pitch, right? Like not even close to a check swing. Harper got ejected on that.
Oh yeah,
right. That's been in the news recently.
And that was Kyle Harrison. Was that against the Giants? Did he get ejected that game? He didn't get ejected that game. Never mind. Scratch that. Continue.
Yeah, I don't know. Although the Giants kept my receipts and said,
yeah, they did. They shoved it.
We'll see how they do this weekend with another.
Yeah, whatever.
With another.
Speaking of,
I
mean, do you want to finish on?
Okay,
Angel,
so
please.
In essence, here's my question: is it time that we move to the digitalized strike zone, where the umpire's getting a cue, be it from his earpiece or whatever, on what are balls and strikes? Because the truth is.
Why do they even need the umpire? I mean, couldn't the catcher?
Well, I'm a purist in the sense that I still want somebody back there in a coat yelling at people.
Yeah,
because
me too. Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I want somebody to be able to yell at and blame for when my team is doing poorly.
Yeah.
Because I'm still a pure fan when it comes to baseball, right? I don't break it down, and I allow myself to be involved as a fan. Which is to understand that, the umpires are really, really, really great at what they do, right? Although, and honestly, given the fastest I think I've ever been behind the plate and seen thrown was low 90s, okay? At that speed, if you blink, you've missed it.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount of movement that gets on these balls at that speed is fucking incredible, right? Like it at points appears to defy
split
physics.
Seconds, right? Yeah.
Right? So to have, and let's just look at this. Quinn Wilcott, this is from yesterday, okay? And you can see this kind of, here's what the scorecards, the basic printouts.
He's the umpire.
He's and Major League Baseball umpire yesterday. This was
Washington
his game
versus Atlanta. Washington.
He was behind the dish. Okay. So overall accuracy, 98%. Okay. That's pretty fucking incredible. That means 3 pitches were missed.
Okay. So, but again, that strike zone there is arbitrary, right? I mean,
no. This is not arbitrary. This is after the game, MLB goes through, they double check every single pitch, right? Every single batter to make sure that the vertical or horizontal strike zone is correctly adjusted. And they have all these computer yes, per batter. They review every single pitch.
Wow,
okay?
That's fascinating.
So, called ball accuracy. That means of every single true ball, I mean, ball that was thrown and called a ball was actually a ball. He got 99% of those right. So there was one pitch right there on the upper left-hand side of the strike zone that he should have called a ball that he called a strike. Okay?
And again, as a baseball player, and I think you played baseball also, right?
I will tell you as an umpire, this is incredible. This is near perfection.
Absolutely. No question.
This is about as good as a human being can get.
Numbers don't lie.
He missed 2 pitches on the outside corner that he called strikes that should not have been.
Yeah, ball don't lie.
Okay? Now, and I will say even more.
Without talking to your microphone.
I was looking at a different. It tells you when the calls were missed. Okay?
All right.
So top of the seventh. So actually, a few of these happened relatively late in the game, which is not obviously when you want to have happen. If anything, I would expect an umpire to miss calls earlier in the game than later in the game, right? Because I feel like early in the game, you're getting settled in, you're really establishing your strike zone. And so I feel like that is the time when more mistakes are made. And obviously, the later in the game it gets, the more critical it tends to feel. But like I said, that's near perfection.
The numbers don't lie. However, baseball is a game of like any sport, movement, right? And more so in baseball because you are. I mean, I don't know what the analogies are, but let's use all the cliches. A game of inches, right? Whatever.
You don't know. We don't. I don't know any either. At least from like
it's a game of inches.
It's thinking all these football
terms. Whatever they are, like right. You know what they are. But a batter in any given AB is going to. You can't say that this is the average strike zone. We just created this per batter. Are they doing it per pitch? Because batters get low, batters.
So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
matter. The strike zone is based on your height in a normal stance once you enter the box.
Okay.
So you can
in a drawing, but if I'm the umpire behind, if you're the umpire and the guy gets low, are you still going to call a strike that's at his head? If
yes.
He's like,
yeah. Absolutely.
That's weird.
At least that was how we were taught in like.
Do you remember the owner of the St. Louis Cardinals who brought in that midget as a gag back in the 20s? Do you know that story? He brought in a midget. Like,
but here's the deal, and like as I had the rule read to me, the reason for doing that is to prevent that kind of stupid. Right, like if you're in the box and you're in a catcher's squat, you're not there to fucking hit. Right? You're there to try and get 4 balls to get on base, probably because you can't fucking hit, right? So the rule is implemented to prevent that, such that the strike zone is equated to your natural stance, your natural height. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. But it negates all the work you do. And
well, but here's the deal,
as
right?
A batter, as a hitter,
if you have for the most part, you're only gonna see that in like Little League and bullshit like that, right?
Right.
For the most part, you're not gonna see anybody whose stance dramatically affects the height of their strike zone so much that you would really take that into account. And if you actually do, I'm probably calling a strike on your fucking ass just because you're making the game go slower and I'm pissed off and you don't want to get a fucking hit anyway. So what the fuck are you doing up there?
Edward Carl Goodell, June 8th, 1925. To June 18, 1961, is the smallest player to appear in a Major League Baseball game. Goodell gained recognition in the second game of the St. Louis Browns doubleheader on August 19, 1950, when weighing 60 pounds and standing 3 feet 7 inches. He became the shortest player in the history of the major leagues. What would you do? Strike him out and just call everything's a strike? I mean, obviously that was a game. Bill Vac was a notorious showman, a promoter who did all kinds of crazy stunts to get people in the park, but I don't know. I don't know if his on-base percentage was 1,000, so he must have walked, right? What would you do? Would you call the guy out? I mean, you can't throw that kid.
Okay,
he's
so
3 feet tall.
This is the 1920s?
1951. 1951.
Oh, Jesus, that's so much worse.
I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, that's when you talk about.
I'm gonna try and throw him a fucking strike. Hopefully, that there's a major league pitcher on the mound that you could put somebody who's in the box at 3'7", and they could still find the fucking strike zone.
And that's my argument right there, right? It's on the pitcher, not some standardized. Here's the box. Like it's on the pitcher.
Okay, but time out. That you're making an asinine argument for a horrible non-baseball related, like, again, point me to the Major League film outside of 1951 and the one gag where that has actually been a fucking a deal.
But that's
the rules
not
make sense as it relates to the strike zone.
Totally beside the point.
No.
That might be true, but that's not the point I'm making.
What
the point I'm making is, I could interrupt you. The point I'm making is that as Major League Baseball goes after every game and reviews every pitch by pitch, batter by batter, and they determine that they come up with an average. They have to come up with an average. They can't say this is the absolute strike zone.
Because it's based on your height.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So it changes every batter. So,
correct.
So it gets longer, it gets wider, it gets shorter.
No, it doesn't get wider, right? It's as wide as the plate.
So wide as the plate. It gets taller and it gets shorter. So that's an eyeball adjustment, right? Like you can't just say, well, we're going to use this measurement that's an average of all guys that are 6'4". There's nuances.
You can go look at the computer software and see how it tracks and how it's used. I mean, it is incredible technology.
I'm sure.
And
I just don't have the capacity to understand it because.
Okay, well that doesn't mean that it's wrong.
No, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying to me it's the argument about analytics versus analytics, right? I mean, am I picking up players?
Okay, well this is proof that the analytics, right, are better than the Major League Baseball umpires that we have right now.
But the only way to really look at a strike and call it a strike is to eyeball it. There's no number to tell me that was a perfect strike.
But you have to understand that the real-time tracking that the computers are able to do now with the cameras, right? And they're able to, in real time, project that across a three-dimensional strike zone that is the correct size down to, like, did it even a millimeter of it nick a corner of any part of that plate within the vertical strike zone that is allowable,
is
right?
That good or bad?
My argument is that it's good because I don't watch baseball for the umpires at all. I mean, yes, I do, but I'm not there to watch the umpires, right? I guess they're a part of the entertainment, right? Like, it is fun to see people get ejected. It is fun to see arguments happen, right? I can appreciate that. What I am saying is I don't think it's part of the charm anymore when we have such clear and convincing evidence about how inaccurate. Like, why should the pitcher who is hitting the strike zone, who is doing his job, right? Like you just said, it's the pitcher's job to find the strike zone. He fucking did. The guy didn't see it. And you're telling me that in today's day and age, with all the technology we have, that a guy didn't see it is going to be what separates the outcomes in professional sports? I mean, fuck me. That is the most asinine argument. And it used to work. It used to work. But we are quickly running out of time on that front. And proof is that Angel Hernandez isn't even in the top 5 worst umpires Major League Baseball has this year or last.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we started and what I wanted to come back to, because hating Angel Hernandez isn't necessarily about him being a bad umpire, right? It's part of the shtick, it's part of the game. It's kind of like, do I really hate everybody that went to Cal? And do I really hate Cal with a passion? Yes, I do, right? Do I hate everybody that went to Arizona State with a passion, right? But it's part of the game, and you got to have the villain. And Angel Hernandez was the villain for us. And speaking of a villain, let's talk about Larry Scott and the Pac-12 conference, which had its final Pac-12 baseball conference, as we touched on in our last podcast. And I just want to talk about
the final Pac-12
tournament,
softball tournament. Which shout out friend of the show and UCLA softball coach Kirk Walker.
Shout out Kirk Walker.
They're in OKC this weekend, and they played last night. They won their first game.
Who did they beat?
Who did they beat? Alabama. And they're good football. They obviously are a good football team. Very good softball team.
Do they have a football?
But they've got their rematch from I don't know if it was when they played Oklahoma for the national championship, but they play Oklahoma tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'm guessing that's got to be Central Time.
Where are they?
Oklahoma.
Probably.
I'm going to go with Central Time.
Let's go with it. And Stanford went ahead and got in. Arizona wins the Pac-12, final Pac-12
baseball.
What do we call it? Pac-12 tournament, Pac-12 baseball tournament, thank you, which is nice for Arizona. Arizona has a storied history with that. They just won one a few years ago. I don't remember how long ago, but we've got some West Coast teams in the College World Series, which started today. We've got some games going on right now. Yesterday for the women, for the softball. And baseball started today. We've got, the West Coast teams in our Arizona, which, they're ranked number 1. They won the Pac-12. Grand Canyon, which is an up-and-coming school.
I'll tell you what, GCU's got many sports teams out there.
Their basketball team was in the Final Four recently. We've got University of Santa Barbara in the College World Series. We've got Oregon in the College World Series.
My favorite counselor ever was getting her degree from GCU, so shout out Kate Jehu.
Shout out Kate Jehu. Hashtag her. Tell her you heard her name on the show. University of San Diego, beautiful private school in San Diego. Ever seen it? It's like a baby. It's private. It's beautiful on the hill. What a beautiful campus.
That is a little city on a hill.
Right. We got UC Irvine. Beautiful Irvine. Nothing happens in Irvine except kids grow up and go to high school there. Fresno State and Oregon State are the teams from the West Coast and no longer the Pac-12. But, as I was thinking about the demise of the Pac-12, I just think of all the great players that came out. I think Stanford has the most with 52, and I had all this information, but it's on one of those devices over there.
52 what?
A player, 25 that have gone into the pro. They have the most. I don't remember the number, but I did have it.
In terms of baseball.
Yeah, baseball players that have gone on. But it's sad to see the Pac-12 go. But I mean, Barry Bonds. I'm not going to start to try and guess, but. There's so many baseball players from the Pac-12, and it was such a storied conference, and it's over now. And that's too bad. But again, the College World Series begins today, and there are some games already being played. I think we've got some scores, don't we? Yeah, we did. But I'm not prepared to give them to you just yet. So
I would love to know from both a coach's and a player's perspective, and obviously I think it'll take some time to answer that question, but, for the schools specifically leaving the Pac and going to the Big Ten, was it worth it? Now, for pretty much, as far as UCLA and SC are concerned, and Washington and Oregon, you're now effectively a miniature pro team, right? Because you have to play half your games in a substantially different time zone. That much travel it wears, man. I mean, that was the thing that we always felt like I was really grateful for when I was at Boise and every place I went, that you tried, if you were going to travel far, you did it early in the season, right?
Always. To your cupcake wins. Actually, no, they came to you.
I never had any of those, actually.
They came to you. You know what? I want you to come back to this because this list is amazing. Some names from the history of the Pac-12. A.J. Hinch, Todd Zeal, Mark McGuire, Brett Boone, Chase Utley, Jackie Robinson, Barry Bonds.
Where'd Jackie go to school? UCLA?
UCLA. Barry Bonds, Terry Francona, Fred Lynn, oh my God, Randy Johnson.
West Coast, Best Coast, baby.
Mike Messina, Tom Seaver, Mark Pryor. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Those are some of the greatest names in the sport, and it's sad to see it go. And I wish all those teams good luck. And what's I think eventually what's going to happen is it's going to be all the colleges are going to be 4 divisions, right? Just like pro sports, and they're going to have one champion. And I think that's how it's got to be because. I mean, this. Speaking of portals and kids transferring. I heard a story the other day. I mean, college football is so different now, right? It's not the same. I mean, it happened almost overnight, it seems like. I heard a story the other day, very interesting. Someone that plays in a school that was close to us, that is close to our hearts. Actually, Stanford. That's Stanford, and then it's close to where we're sitting right now, right? A young man named Lance Kennelly, a senior. He is a defensive end, 6'5" on the Stanford website, 6'4" on the actual football website. But Stanford lists him at 230, and football websites list him at 254. There's a little bit of height discrepancy. The kid's from Mission Viejo. He's a Pac-12 all academic honor roll. He received offers as a freshman from Stanford, ASU, Boise, Colorado. Last season, 35 tackles and 9 starts, 12 appearances. This young man has transferred. He's a graduate student at Stanford. He has graduated. He has transferred from, and this story is close to my heart, and you'll understand why in a second. He's transferred from Stanford, a graduate student, to Arizona. Now, hey, I'm not going to knock Arizona. My undergraduate degrees from there. I grew up in Tucson. I love the school, the traditions. It's as good as any other college. I think whatever college you go to, you're going to get what you put out. You're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? But for me, it went the other way. I went from Arizona to Stanford, and I got to tell you that this kind of blows up the whole myth that kids are going to, when they didn't get paid, at least they're getting this education. They're not going. Why would you leave Stanford? And I don't have an answer for this, and I'm not angry about it. I'm curious. Why? Stanford to Arizona. And again, this is not a knock on Arizona. I love the school, but it's
I understand.
The other way, right?
So
it's not Stanford, is my point.
So, listen. And
Lance Kennelly's a nice kid, by the way. Great kid.
I think that you and I both have some affinity for Stanford.
Amen, brother.
And in our own ways. But it's not all it's cracked up to be, right? Like it's
True.
Not an impenetrable. It has its issues, of which there are many, right? And substantial ones. And it's not that they're not working towards solving them, or
are they?
Arguments can be made. I could see why somebody would leave for a number of reasons.
No question.
Irrespective of... And listen, it's been since before my time, really, that Stanford has had the kind of success that commands respect. They haven't been that in the last...
And you know what's funny about Stanford is that they should be considered a team to be reckoned with. I mean, the Rose Bowls in the 70s, the names that have come out of there, that last run in Rose Bowls with Shaw, but they're just not. There's no... You know what Stanford is? They're like Camilo Duvall's walk-up song. They don't instill fear in any...
So, actually, we do have a birthday. This is a good time for our celebrity birthdays, and it's a belated birthday.
Let's hear it.
Speaking of Arizona and Stanford football. Peter Hansen, linebackers coach for the Carolina Panthers.
High School.
Yeah.
Shout out Skull Vikes.
Yeah. A very happy belated birthday.
That dude played basketball and played football at Arizona, and the only thing he did at Arizona was block the hell out of some field goals, and it was awesome. When he came in, it was the best, man. Shout out Peter Hansen. Last time I saw him was at Sundance Steakhouse having dinner with his lovely wife. Shout out Peter, Coach Pete, wherever you are. Oh, wait, he's in Carolina.
Yeah.
Shout out Coach Pete. Coming back to Lance Kennelly, just quickly, he gets to reunite with a former coach, right? Coach Aquina, which one of the greatest DB coaches in all of college football history. So I get that. There's some things, but again, being a graduate student I'm wondering if there was money involved, because you can't find that anywhere. And this is what NIL is doing now, right? A kid who's been 5 years at Stanford in the graduate program, put in all that time to leave. There must have been something really enticing for him to leave Stanford in his 5th year. And my point is that completely. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I wonder because I've made the drive from the airport in Tucson to campus. It's not the same as driving from SFO to Stanford. It's just not. So again, it's curious to me. It's curious to me. But speaking of former Stanford football players, Elijah Holder, we remember him, young man, right?
Yeah.
Played from 2014 to 2018. Played a little bit with the Denver Broncos. I think he was drafted by the Detroit Lions. I think he's playing USF or some other league. I can't remember, Barnstormers maybe. But the young man is now former Stanford football player. He's a model with Lululemon. Lululemon.
That's
Lululemon.
that can't be a bad gig at all.
I mean, I do it. I'd do it naked if they paid me, bro.
You're not a fucking Lululemon model? I didn't know you owned anything that wasn't Lululemon.
Look at you, man. Look at you. So, yeah, so there is life beyond Stanford football. You can transfer to Arizona, or you can become a Lululemon.
With all respect to Arizona, I'm going to Lululemon.
Well,
but,
you know, I mean, like I
listen,
said,
if there's plenty of reasons to leave Stanford apart from, potentially seeing a different or better athletic opportunity for yourself somewhere else, right?
Well, and talking about leaving schools, you had there was an episode in your life where you had to make maybe once or twice in your life where you had to make that decision. Now, these young men, obviously Elijah went and played football, but it couldn't have. I just can't imagine that decision for Lance, the young man that transferred from Stanford to Arizona, was easy, right? I don't know, maybe it was, but can you walk me through that? Because you've been through it and you've been under different circumstances, right? But leaving a college is leaving a college, right? Especially after you've invested and you think and you believe that you're there for a reason. This is your destiny. You've worked your whole life, your coach, everything you've trained for, and then all of a sudden, it's gone. Walk me through that.
That was a fabulous segue. That was really, really good. Shit. Yeah. You never really know.
Thank you, buddy.
If you're going to mesh at a certain place or a certain program. That was something that I did not necessarily realize going in. I think, at the time, Boise was the only place that had offered me anything, right? So to have a walk-on offer, any kind of offer from them, I felt so honored, and Boise was...
Boise?
Yeah. I look back on my time there now, and, I'd be lying if I didn't say that, there are still aspects of it that objectively I don't agree with. I think, it's hard for me to really tell, because from a player's perspective, going in at Boise State, blue collar is the mentality and the attitude and the work ethic. And
not to interrupt you, train of thought, but that comes from the coach, correct? The head coach creates that culture.
Absolutely. And I don't think that head coaches have quite the influence that we believe that they do, or at least that we like to think that they do. I do believe that they are incredibly powerful people, right? And on campuses, high school and collegiate, oftentimes, they're paid more than the president of the university. You and I both personally know of stories, right, where if a head coach wants, they're pretty effective at making things go away.
And they're pretty effective at making things happen.
Right. So that's an incredibly powerful position to be in. As I became a coach and started going to coaching, seminars and everything.
Those are no beer drinking there, right?
Certainly, yeah.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Somebody told me one time that if you are a person who's experienced driving under the influence and been convicted by it, as I have on multiple occasions, therefore I go by the grace of God. I go by therefore however that thing goes, right? Yeah. But somebody told me in a football office, probably whether you've been in, and said, hey, if you want a job, you're in the right place because you wouldn't be the only person on this staff who was dealing with that issue, right? But not to get off on a tangent, I'm just saying alcohol and coaching.
There's no surprise. How many years ago was it that the Dolphins offensive line coach?
Oh God!
Video came out of him doing coke.
He's a coach for the Niners now. He's in the Niners staff.
Hey, and listen,
God bless him.
I hope he's that his life has turned around. Not that I'm not judging any usage of any drugs. I mean, do your thing, teach their own. God knows.
That video is hilarious. But
it is funny.
It's awesome.
But, I generally don't think that doing cocaine at your workplace is the best idea. But, hey, if he turned his life around. So, yes, there are many, many different personalities, obviously, within the head coaches of college football, even within the different staffs of college football. Like I said, I don't think that the head coach is quite as omnipotent as we would like to believe. That being said, they do have an incredible amount of influence and power. One of the things that I think the reason that I was drawn to Boise and to Coach Peterson in opposition to Nevada and Coach Alt was that, if you grew up in Reno, you did not grow up hearing nice things about Chris Alt, right? And I never met the man personally, right? Don't know him from Adam, but I could tell you that there weren't too many people who spoke highly of him as an individual. That seemed to be the complete opposite with Peterson.
So just to walk it back for our listeners, maybe who aren't, Chris Alt was the
head coach at Nevada for a number of years. He was the athletic director first, then he fired the football coach and hired himself. Hell of a move.
Sounds like a good guy. And then, obviously, Coach Peterson was at Boise.
Right. So, when I didn't get anything, not even a walk-on offer from Nevada, I basically wanted to send the biggest fuck you I possibly could.
How big is that?
Well, Boise.
Yeah,
Let me go to the school that at that time, and with the exception of the Colin Kaepernick senior year, Boise has largely made Nevada kind of a whipping post.
What year was that when Kaepernick was the senior year?
2010. Yeah.
That was a big deal in Reno, yeah? Was he good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was at the game with a friend and my older brother, and we were playing in the state semifinal the next day against Liberty, which is a big school out of Vegas that is traditionally the Polynesian school of Las Vegas.
Okay.
And we played them in an absolute boxing match the next day that ended up being 6-7.
Nice.
Bro, I've never been that sore after anything in my entire life, on top of a concussion.
Ooh.
But so let me get back to this locker room talk and culture and environment, because
and again, this is this culture, you coming in as a gay player and coach.
Right, but as a player, I'm not out, right? Like, I'm an 18/19-year-old kid from, in comparison to where we live, a very conservative part of the country. I didn't grow up knowing gay people. Of the gay people that I did know, they were, belittled and teased horribly.
People leave school all the time
one of the difficult things about recruiting is it's really hard to project what's going to happen in the life of an 18 to 22-year-old, right? There's so much change in any human being's life that happens during that time period. Not uncommon for, even non-athletes to transfer schools. In my case, it had certainly become an unsustainable environment for me personally.
And again, referencing you as a young man who was struggling to really discover his identity at this point.
Yes. And I will tell you the instance where things changed for me and kind of the result that I think at the time that it had, which is this. For the first week of fall camp, they keep the older guys and the younger guys separate as like an acclimation period. God bless the coaching staff. That meant that they were doing 3 or 4 practices a day. But
wow,
after that first week,
were all your practices on campus? Did you guys stay on campus?
Yeah. With a few exceptions. There were times where Pete wanted us to go somewhere else, to get out of the normal.
Monotony.
Yeah. So once the teams came together, and at the time, the new facility at Boise had not been built yet.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's top notch. So the old locker room and shower setup, as anybody who is familiar with that place, it's not glamorous at all. Obviously, it was built.
They never really are, unless you're at Oregon or Alabama, right?
I think Stanford has a really nice locker room. And especially the visitors is the nicest accommodations of anyone's.
That's the one stadium in probably on earth where the visitors' locker room is awesome.
Is legit, yeah. So anyway, there was, not very many showers, old school setup. Anyway, we had a player who would pick out one of the guys who he thought was looking at another guy during shower time, and he would start this chant, and it was to the tune of "I Want to Rock." So you imagine a pretty confined space full of 120 some odd guys, okay? And this particular player would pick out like a guy, right? And he'd be like, "Hey, everybody." I'm going to use my own name for an example. I never got called out, but here's what it was, right?
Shane wants one.
No, he'd be like, "Hey, everybody, Shane's fucking gay." And the whole locker room of 125 guys would yell
Shane's
back,
gay.
"Gay!"
Yeah.
And then he'd yell, "So fucking gay." And the whole locker room would respond, "Gay! So fucking gay! Gay!" Just like at full fucking volume. Right? I didn't realize, at the time, I'm a 19-year-old kid. I hardly know my ass from a hole in the ground,
Ouch.
right? Let alone knowing that I might like my ass or something to that effect.
That sounds
right?
like it hurts.
That's funny, right? But that's part of the joke. I never understood where the kind of faggot bashing mentality added to, your aggression or playing ability or anything of that nature. Obviously, if you know anything about history, you know that is dramatically inaccurate. Regardless, it is a world where, up until quite recently, if a coach thought that you were not giving it your all and that you were being a pussy, he could whip out his dick in front of you and challenge your manhood in that
Ooh.
way.
Ooh, we keep mating.
And that's acceptable. So I really, and for many, many years, like I didn't even know like how to put words to that experience, or because obviously to admit that it bothered me, I had to like come out. Right. So that entire time, very early on in my experience at Boise State, right, do I figure out what kind of locker room this is? However, I cannot leave because this is my dream, is to play college football and at a big time university, and Boise was as far as I could get to the top, and it's a mid-major for sure. But, that was my dream. And so on top of that, but not only, still having a desire to play football, but, feeling this like gut punch to the soul that happened. I don't even know how to describe it. And then, it was pretty quick that like serious depression set in, and I started losing weight rapidly, right? Which in any athletic endeavor is not going to be great for you. Offensive line is probably the last place on planet Earth, right, where you want to be dramatically losing weight, unless you're...
Talk about a gut punch to the soul.
Well,
right?
So, and I wanted out immediately. I knew I wanted out immediately. I just didn't know how I could get out. And, I started...
Out, you mean just away, just be gone.
Right. I wanted to be done playing football. I did not want to ever walk into a college football locker room
because
so long as I lived. Because it was the scariest fucking place I'd ever been in my entire goddamn life. This was not a place where like your teammates were going to be cool if you were gay, obviously.
I want to rock.
Now, years later, and in adulthood, I have since reunited with teammates from that Boise team. Ironically, ended up working with one of them at a point in my coaching career. And I remember telling him that story, and I remember just like when he connected the dots of like, oh fuck, that must have sucked to be you, right? Like sucked to be you is an understatement, because there's a saying that gets passed around among coaches, and I don't believe it to be 100% true. But there's something to be said for it, which is if it's happening, in your locker room, on your team, you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen, right? But either way, you're signing off. That was a part of the culture. And, I'm very lucky that I ended up where I did, in life and in my coaching career. I'm so grateful to Coach Shaw. You talk about somebody who was a true friend to me when I needed it, let alone set aside the boss thing, set aside the man's, football knowledge, victories, all of those things, right? Just man-to-man, personal level, was the first human being in that system that interacted with me as another human being. I thought that even after, a serious run-in, a serious alcohol addiction, sobering up from that, having done a substantial amount of therapy, that I would be okay enough to go back into a college football locker room. The first time we traveled and we were in Florida and we no longer had the coaches' showers, right? And we had a 6-hour flight back to SFO out of Orlando, where early September we'd just gotten, drug up and down the fucking field in 95-degree thunderstorm weather, just the shit, absolute shit. And there's only one set of showers for coaches and players, right? And I had very, very, very cognizantly up to that point made every effort to never, ever put myself in anything that could even be close to construed as a compromising situation. Okay?
Meaning what?
Meaning that obviously if I'm...
Well, I guess,
if you're naked around somebody, there's a potential of them being able to say something, right? If you're not there, then there's no potential, right? Because I was never fucking there. But I don't have a choice at this point because I'm late for the fucking bus. We just got our ass handed to us. And I am not about to fly back to San Francisco from fucking Florida, having just gone 6 hours in the September sunshine. Thank you very much. So I go into the shower.
Smell terrific.
Right.
Lee.
Yeah, exactly. So I go into the shower.
Daisy.
Only I know what a PTSD flashback is, right? Because I've experienced it. And it is...
Now they call it core trauma or internal core.
Whatever the fuck they call it. I mean, it's
crazy.
Yes. Okay, sure. Update the vernacular, right? It's the same thing.
I know.
Shell shock, PTSD, core trauma, right? Like whatever you want to call it.
It's the same thing.
Yes. And I can't turn on the shower. I can't find the shower head. My eyeballs will not leave the ceiling. And I cannot find the shower to turn it on.
I'm confused.
Which part?
Your eyeballs, you can't find the shower? What does that mean?
Because I'm staring at the ceiling.
Oh, okay.
And refuse to look anywhere else.
Got it. While you're showering. Sorry, I got that.
Well, I can't. I'm not showering yet because I can't turn on the fucking water.
Got you.
Fortunately, an unnamed player.
What was his name?
You're a prick. Turned on the shower for me so that I could take a shower and get out of there. Okay. He just turned on the shower.
He was vibing. He knew. He understood. Maybe he himself was gay.
No.
What happened?
No.
What was that all about?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. What?
It just happened, right?
What happened?
He just showed up and turned the water on for you. No big deal.
It's an old school, circular shower with a lot, like 4 different heads or whatever. So there were people standing around like a tower thingy, and he turned it on because he was standing next to it.
Gotcha.
It's not some fucking revelation or anything like that, right?
I'm just curious that the moment where somebody's in the shower.
We're talking about almost a decade later, though. From my playing experience at Boise State.
Gotcha.
I'm now a graduate assistant coach at Stanford.
Gotcha.
Okay, we're in Florida.
Gotcha. Yes, UCF.
And I have a fucking mental breakdown.
Got you.
All this time, I'm working with the best psychologists and addiction therapists that Stanford has to offer.
And Coach Shaw.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was behind me on all things of taking care of myself. Right. But so I'm not talking about like some run of the mill team of people, right? Like people who specialize in addiction medicine and trauma and all of these things, right? That I'm meeting with on a weekly basis. And, we were getting phone calls to do news magazine interviews or whatever it was. And my answer was at the time, just a blanket statement, always no, because I wanted to coach, right? I had done the activism thing and gotten my ass handed to me. And I was just ready to coach, that's really what I wanted to do. even with the amount of resources at my disposal, which were significant. And Shaw made sure of that.
What year did you get to Stanford?
I got there in 2018.
Sun Bowl versus Pitt.
Yeah, but I wasn't on staff in 2018. I didn't join staff until
you came to
January
18, 19. Gotcha.
I worked the summer of 18.
Gotcha.
On like
Going
the
into
stuff
19,
with like
19,
Jimmy
yeah.
Dre
Yep.
and then Morgan.
Well, 2019, 4-8, 3-6 in the Pac-12, ended up 6th place. 2020, 4-2, 3rd in the North. 2021,
we
3-9.
we don't need to
2022,
rehash.
3-9.
Not the greatest years of Stanford football.
Those are not good years.
So I can see now, looking back on it, just how fucking psychotic the entire thing was, how completely overwhelming it was. And I remember, and it's so sweet because I know that he very sincerely meant it, but I remember Coach coming up to me one day,
Coach
Shaw, and he told me, he's like, just, don't allow yourself to get overwhelmed. If you're feeling overwhelmed, come talk to me and I'll take something off your plate. Which, of course, this is like God, right?
Yeah,
telling you, my child, if you need respite. And you're like, no, God, I am one of your soldiers. Right? So, I mean, the I'm not good enough complex just fuels everybody on that campus. But, it's so, you don't want to tell him, Coach, I can't do it. I need help. Right? I mean, that's like, oh, God. I mean, I was prepared to die in place of that, right? Now, fortunately, better things happened.
I wanted to tell him that, running the ball up the middle, never mind.
You wanted to be an asshole?
Yeah.
You know what they say, the Teddy Roosevelt quote, right?
No.
Man in the arena.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. I was. That's all I was. We were all just men in the arena.
So,
watching, hoping, learning, experiencing.
Well, and it's, I tell this story now because I think it's really important for this reason. You have to be incredibly careful where you place incentives because they will be met. The premium right now has gone all in on win and win now. That comes at a cost.
Well, look what's happening. I mean, kids are transferring. Kids are leaving
Stanford
to go to Arizona. I mean,
there were kids who transferred while I was there with Shaw.
Right.
Well, yes, there was. It happens, right? Kids, they finish their undergraduate degree and they still want to play. Yeah. Maybe they're not getting the opportunities that they.
Well, and I think COVID. I think we're still on the telltale end. I think this class was the last class that got like 3 extra years, but there might be a few guys here and there. But yeah, but I want to come back just to one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt between that. Just back to Shaw as a man, as a coach, as a leader. I have those similar experiences with him. But the first time you and I talked, you told me a story, and I can never get it right. But you were in very bad shape, and Coach showed up to see you, and he said something to you about football and dead people. Can you give me that quote? Because that is awesome. Everybody I tell that story to says, wow, so simple but so profound. Can you walk me through that piece?
Okay. During my short tenure at Stanford, I ended up
almost dead
in the ER on 1 or 2 occasions. And yes, Coach did come to visit me.
I love this story.
I will tell you what. So, okay, I'm gonna approach this with a sense of humor. And Coach Shaw, if you're out there, thank you. But so okay, here's what happens.
Greatest coach at Stanford football history.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll cut out the early parts of it because it's not very entertaining. I got exceedingly drunk, and then I woke up in the hospital, right? And I wake up and I've got IVs everywhere. I've got shit attached to me, and there's a nurse sitting next to me, and I'm in my own room, And I pretty quickly figure out that I'm Stanford, right? Because I've been there more than once before. And, I'm kind of like talking to the nurse, and she's like, oh, like, you're finally back. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what's up? And she was like, oh, honey, you were trying to take your clothes off. And I was like, wait, hold on. And you're like, no, it's okay. I'm gay. And I was like, oh, Jesus, right? So she's just telling me about like all the
shame and regret,
the blackout things that I'm doing right. So we're sitting there talking for a minute, and it's dawning on me that I think, I've probably fucked my job right out the window. And
you know what?
Down
Frothy
the road
emotional appeal seldom works.
So I'm laying there in bed, and there's a knock at the door, and a lady from hospital administration comes in. And she says, hi, Shane, my name is such and such. She goes, I have a Matt Doyle.
Oh, God.
And he's saying that he and Coach would like to come down and see you. And I'm looking at her like,
shut up,
I've
Professor
just
Doyle.
Seen a fucking ghost, right? And so she takes the hit. She's like, maybe I'll tell him now's not the best time, right? So she leaves.
That's almost scarier than being in the hospital, right?
Way worse. 20 minutes later, she's back.
No, he isn't.
And she's like, Shane.
Yes, he is.
He's on the phone again. He really wants to come down.
Yeah.
And I look at the nurse, who to this day is a friend, thank God. And I'm looking at her because I'm half drunk.
Matt Doyle, Director of Football Operations,
yes,
Stanford University.
Great man. I'm bloated up on drugs, right? I'm looking at her like, tell me what to do. You're my mom in this scenario. And she's like, you got to do it at some point, sweetheart. And so I just looked at her and I was like, okay, like you can tell them they can come down. So yeah, not very many, maybe 20 minutes later, in walks Coach Shaw.
The DFO and the head football coach at Stanford.
And I am
University,
in a hospital bed.
At Stanford Hospital.
Just
you're in a hospital bed. You drunk yourself silly.
Yeah.
And the people who have hired you and given you the opportunity of your life
are standing in front of me
at Stanford University to coach.
Yes.
Are over you, looking at you lying in bed because you could not control your ability to drink as a result of a lot of things. But what a great story. But he said something to you about dead people in football.
He said, football's no good to a dead person.
Football is no good to a dead person. So...
And I'm getting kind of like emotional talking about it.
You should. I am.
But
football is no good to a dead person.
It was honestly like
so simple but so profound. Because in that moment, what else could he say to you that isn't going to hit you in the way that hits you? I mean, I get it. It's not anything. But it's the moment, it's the timing, it's the word. And I can see him doing it. And it's just very gentle, matter-of-fact kind of way. No smile, no shtick, no overly or under, whelmed, whatever. And you still tell that story to this day. That's incredible. And it meant something to you.
I mean, how could it not?
Yeah.
Like I said, I had the worlds that I had come from. I'd been forced out of one coaching job for coming out. Let go of another one under some interesting circumstances. I knew, at least I thought I knew what college football was about based on my experience at Boise State. I didn't expect to live to my 30s. Like, even as I am applying to graduate school at Stanford, being accepted, going down this path, I am fully expecting that I will kill myself somehow, or that the drinking will kill me of its own, right?
Which is in essence the same thing.
Which is, yes. Either direct suicide or slow suicide, doesn't matter. It was the most unbelievable, ridiculous amount of stress. Like I said, I would wake up every single day and I would just start vomiting convulsively from the stress. I couldn't appreciate at the time what he meant, because I'm 23 years old. I think I'm fucking invincible, right? I mean, like, up to that point, anything that I had decided to do in life had pretty much happened, right? When I made the decision that I wanted to send film up to Boise, they were like, here's a walk-on offer, right? Which was the best that I was going to get. Coaching had been pretty successful for me up to that point. You get in, or, I had the opportunity to give a TED Talk. That seemed to
Shout out TED.
change my life quite a bit. Honestly, I don't think without that I get into Stanford. I get into grad school at Stanford, right? Like, for a 23-year-old kid, I had a fair amount of success at a very young age. And of course, I'm having a hard time following instructions from other people.
I think that's how old I was when I got to Stanford, actually, 23 years old.
So, I can have some empathy for a younger version of myself, because, that is a tremendous amount of pressure for a 23-year-old kid. And I say kid because, yeah, I mean, I was 23 in years. I was probably, 14 in maturity in many respects.
There's a song by Johnny Cash, it's one of my favorite songs ever. It's called The Good Earth. And there's a line in that song, and Johnny Cash is reflecting on his life and trials and tribulations, pains, joys, jubilations, all that stuff. Very reflective song. And he says in one line, like steel, I'm probably stronger from going through the fire. And I think back on what you're telling me and how emotional it is for you and all the ins and outs of that story, which we're barely, talk about peeling back the layers, right? We're barely scratching the surface. But you're here telling that story, right? From the hospital to the emotions, to the psychological trauma, to the emotional distress, to the people, to the places, to the things, all of those factors in your life that brought you to this point, right? And look at you. You're alive, you're well, you're telling your story. We're doing this podcast, and it's a powerful message, Shane. I hear it and I internalize it. Like you, I've been in some places where I hope I had not gotten to, or I wish I hadn't been, for lack of, is that good grammar that I messed that up? And to be here with you talking about this and putting this message out there is a privilege. It's an honor, if I will, to be here with you to talk about these things. We're going to continue these conversations as we wrap our show up today. I want to thank you, Shane, for doing what you do for the patients and for all the things that went wrong today, but you always bring the positivity. I do want to shout out somebody before we go. We were talking about a company called Whores and Booze out of Santa Monica, California. They just got their there's a gem show in Las Vegas, the big one. I don't know what it's called. And they are on the Sphere. And I've got the glasses here, and it's called Whores and what's in the name? Whores and Booze, right? These guys are two skaters out of Santa Monica, California. I hope we put this in our clip, because I want them to see this stuff it's nice. It's high end. It's really, these guys started from nothing.
Was that ad next to Gucci or which?
It was Gucci. They're up there, man. You can buy their stuff in Nordstrom's. The hats have this cool little, they're very classy little.
At some point I would love to be able to propose.
Let's get Whores and Booze if you guys.
So,
absolutely.
But I'm way too poor to afford any kind of.
We'll get them as our sponsor. Thank you, Whores and Booze, Santa
Support
Monica.
Gay marriage. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary almost. So
10 years.
Pitch in, help a brother out.
Whores and Booze, we love you, and we love Whores and Booze. Whores and Booze, I guess.
At one point or another.
Shane, thank you very much. You can find us on X. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You type in Balls Out on Twitter.
Balls Out Takes.
Balls Out Takes. And on YouTube, if you type in my name or you type in Shane or you type in Ophny and Shane, you'll find us. I'd like to, again, thank all our sponsors. I'd like to thank all the people who work behind the scenes. I'd like to thank our makeup and hair people who have been on vacation since we started. I don't know when they're coming back. Thank you, everybody. Shane Wickes, Ophny, Escalante signing off. This is Balls Out, and we are out.